What's going on YouTube? So I finally did it. I closed on the sale of my first home, and it has been one of the most satisfying, yet at the same time defeating feelings I have ever felt in my life. If this is your first time seeing a video by Black, please hit the sub button for me, man or woman. Please hit a like if whatever you find that I say is intriguing, interesting, gives you pause, makes you question life. Leave a comment to describe how you are feeling in thought and emotions. Yeah, we'll get into it. I bought my first home, my wife and I. We bought in 2021. And a quick backstory on how and why we bought. Because, and the hindsight of this is pretty crazy. I wasn't at the time prepared to buy, right? Mentally. I wasn't in a space to be settled and to find myself to be in one, home for a couple of years. I moved around a lot as a child. I moved around throughout the States. I lived in a lot of places. So, me buying outside of the financial requirements of buying, I wasn't mentally prepared. However, the renting situations weren't the best. We rented a house and we ran into a lot of issues with the home, and we found a decent opportunity to just go ahead and make a purchase. We found out at the time that it would be quote unquote equitable for us to buy at the time, right? This is during the rise of COVID. So home prices, interest rates were great, right? I got an interest rate under 3.4%. If some of my financial history or credit history was a little bit better, or if I had a larger down payment or more money to lower the interest rate, I would have been around 2.8, 2.9%, right? Historically low interest rates. So it made sense, which means our mortgage payment was essentially the same, if not cheaper than the average rental price at the same size and location of our would-be home. So it made sense. Let's do it. Let's do it. And equity was just rising. Equity was gaining after we closed on the house, right? At least on paper, it rose 10, 15%, which is crazy. Well, this is COVID, Fast forward a year or two later, equity rose more. We gained like 25 to 30%, So if we wanted to sell in 2023 or the end of 2022, only holding the home for about a year and a half, we could have sold much, much higher than what we bought for. But we didn't. Why? We wanted stability, right? We were maintaining, or better yet, growing a family. Our daughter was coming into play, right? She was born just a couple months after we sold, or we closed on the house purchase. And everything's fine and dandy, right? Mortgage at the time, a little under $1,650 a month. And we were renting an apartment for $1,350. And then the year before that, we were renting a house for $1,500. So we're paying just a little bit more in mortgage and some sort of security with assuming financial hardships will come. We want to just be kicked out of the house, like what happens with evictions and rental obscurities. We're like, yeah, this makes sense. And you know what? It did make sense. But I had this gut feeling and I didn't know why. I had this gut feeling to make it happen, or to wanting to make it happen. The thought was there to say, we got to let go earlier than what we imagined. And I don't know why until now, right? I don't know why, guys. So we obviously stayed in the house. We stayed in the house. However, in 2024, we wanted to sell our house. Only there for 3 years, said, let's do it. We found another house. We found another location that would make sense for us, make sense for our growth, make sense for our stability and maintenance. And it's something that we were working for, i.e. the American dream. 2024, we tried to sell it. We had no offers. The house was listed for 3 to 4 months. We had 15 to 20 plus showings. people weren't able to afford the home, our appreciated, equitable home, which was still far under the average cost for a 3 to 4 bedroom home in America. Far under. I'm talking by $60,000, $70,000 under the national average. People aren't able to afford it. We had no offers. Signed one. We're like, man, let's just rent it. The American dream. Become landlords. Let's get into this property. We could rent it out, use those proceeds as cash flow, or help offset any costs with our would-be new mortgage in our new home, which was much more expensive because we worked for it. And at the time, our income basically doubled from purchasing house A to basically purchasing house B, right? So we're working for it. This is the American dream. This is what we want. This is our dream house. This is our goal, blah, 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 blah. Let's start getting into real estate on the pretense that we would be living in the homes first. Now, I thought about, I was talking to my wife, this was the plan of action. Those first 2 homes, we obviously lived in it, but the next few properties would be, condos or whatever that we would get into and invest based on income from our jobs and based on how the market is shifting with how we would see our houses do. Because we would be buying or investing in places that are, i.e., more touristy or more prime for rental longevity, not what we purchase in a primary residence. So we were just looking at market trends and stuff like that. That was going to be the goal. Buy places, rent it out, invest, hold, then sell. We got the place rented out, and we're like, wow, we are landlords. Not only are we helping us because we needed to have the house because we couldn't sell the house, we had to go buy another house because that's what we're working for. We're now able to help out another family, right? Not charging a lot, but it's able to cover the mortgage and then some, cash flow. Then we closed on our second house. A Black American. I cried in the U-Haul truck at age 39, 38, where the first time home buyers is able to buy a home. I bought my first home at 26, buying my second home at 30. There was a level of accomplishment that I felt, and I broke down in the car. So now we have 2 homes. Both at the time of purchase was already being appraised or at least getting equity within the first month, guys. We're like, yes, this is going to be part of our retirement. Yes, we are starting something. We're starting a trend. We're getting rid of generational curses and starting to slowly build wealth. Wrong. Now understand the underlining factors and what that all took. Life is crazy, but you go through it and you always got to be in the gray area. It ain't black and white with life. They told you it was, it's not. About a month and a half later, I get laid off of my job. A month and a half later. Guys, this affected us to where we're like, wow, our mortgage is almost doubled in the first house, right? We're only making 20 to 30% in cash flow, which is okay for pocket change, but it's really for accidentals. And me being laid off, I'll make 70 to 8% of our household income. This is not gonna work, right? I had to go back to my old job because this job that I got laid off from, I was only there for about 5.5 to 6 months. A whole nother story, but this is why we pivoted. This helped trigger our pivot out of the States. These people, these companies, like they know about your business. They want to know your residence, right? So they knew I was buying a new home. You know how crazy that is? Things happen for a reason, so I can't knock history or my past. Things happen for a reason. So that triggered us, right? Laid off. Now we're part of that. We just bought a home and I'm so young. I'm just thinking this is going to keep happening. Long story short, we put our second house up for rent and thankfully got someone to rent it out to prepare our leave that would happen in August of 2025. Fast forward, so why are you talking about the second house? Well, this kind of relates to the first house, right? Okay. September, October 2025, our tenant from the house that we bought in 2021, right? That person started February 2025 because we needed that prerequisite to buy our house because we couldn't to buy our second house because we couldn't sell the first house, right? So we got to show that the mortgage is being covered or we increase our income. Couldn't do that. renting made more sense. However, 6 months later, our tenant decides to up and leave. And for some odd reason, we were not thinking fully about that. We wouldn't think income from there just stops. This is why we're living abroad, we're not overseas. It stops. So cool. That tenant moves out in November. We squash everything. And I'm like, writing on the wall again, let's try to sell it. Because I don't think renting it out made sense. Didn't think paying 8 to 10% for a property manager made sense for that home when we could sell it for a decent penny, which would still be extremely under the national average. Much under when we were trying to first sell it for, by 30 to 40 grand, guys. Anyway, we listed the house for sale November. And then we get 20 to 30 showings. A lot of activity. The common factor is the house is too high. It's priced too high. Priced too high. And I'm just gonna be transparent, guys. We were priced at around $320,000. That was our listing price, 320 grand. We bought our house at 263 in 2021. Our house or the market in 2023, end of 2022, floated our house around 370 to 380. A year later, we tried to sell it starting at 360 and we brought it down to 330 and couldn't do anything. That's when we rented it out. November 2025, we listed it again, 320. Everybody's like, it's too old, it's too much, go down to 280, but no offers. Now I'm looking into certain things. I'm looking into other factors going on. I'm looking into, foreclosures happening around the state, around the country. I'm looking at delinquencies happening around the state, around the country. I'm looking at job layoffs happening around the state and the country. Why aren't people able to afford this affordable house? I know the interest rate is high, but now there's more programs for first-time home buyers than it was before. Now we as a seller have to give seller credits. We didn't think about that. And so equity, or the ability to capitalize on net proceeds, just keeps going out the window. And now, since we're in a position to where we needed to sell the house because we're living abroad, now we have to settle. We compromised and made a settlement. We've only received 2 offers on the home within a 5.5 month period. 30 plus showings or inquiries where the house was extremely undervalued. We had to settle because this is where the buying pool is. People cannot afford a home because they can barely purchase it. And our deemed value isn't even marketable. It's not just about the market. What we actually sold the house for is still under market value. When you're trying to sell a house, it doesn't matter how much equity you put into it. It's about if you can sell it. It's about who can afford your value, your assumed or esteemed value. Not only did I lose money in buying my first home, I lost pride and confidence on being a homeowner, trying to set my life up in a way to where I will have a piece of this American dream as long as I live. I lost pride, I lost confidence, and I feel like it was one of the most unsettling sales that or transactions rather, because I could be on either side of a sale. It's one of the most unsettling transactions I will probably ever have for the rest of my life. I wanted to give that kind of background, kind of that purview, guys. Foreclosures or delinquencies have raised dramatically just in the last 12 months, guys. Year over year, it's 28% from March 2025 to March 2026. Florida, amongst 2 other states, leads in foreclosures for 1 out of every 750 home-owned properties with mortgages. I wanted to mention that Because yeah, you're talking about selling the house, but why does that matter? Well, there's a lot of people who own homes and who are attempting to sell their home to purchase another one, like we did. There's people that we've experienced, people that we know who sell their houses to go and rent. People sell their homes to go and rent. I got to tell you something. It's getting harder to hold a home, let alone purchase it, because there's so many variables in the environment. There's so many variables with the housing market because it's stipulated on your ability to keep and hold income. It's stipulated on your ability to appropriate your finances as best as you can to make sure you are paying your mortgage on time. I want you guys to think about this. If you guys are in the midst of trying to purchase a home or trying to sell a home, really think about this. What are you gaining with trying to buy, and what are you gaining with trying to sell? Think about what your options are and where you're trying to go next, right? Because I'll tell you this, in the next 4 to 5 years, most people will not be able to buy a home. And if they're able to purchase a home, which is different, I've talked about this for years. Purchasability and affordability is two different things. Purchasability is the ability to be pre-approved, at least conditionally, for a loan. You go through the closing clause, you bring your minimum, funds for closing. You have the appropriate documents, credit history, all that lined up, right? Everything is checked off in this monotonous, box of categories. And then you're in the home, and then you have affordability, which is the hardest part, the longevity of the loan. And a lot of people are tapping out. They're either trying to sell their home or they're foreclosing. You get what I'm saying? It's making the banks harder to approve people for loans. That's why I talk about being on the seller side or being on the homeowner side when you're dealing with a house, because that side, that is affecting buyers. Interest rates are already high. It's already heightened, especially from the COVID pandemic, so it's affecting buying power, buying opportunity. It's affecting first-time home buyers. It affected us. We've lost an estimated $70,000 to $80,000+ in equity, guys. But I gotta look at the other end. I've cleared up over $250,000 in debt. We do not have that debt attached to our name anymore. There's always two sides to the story. You could always look at the glass half empty. I try to pay attention to the glass half full. But you gotta really think about the longevity, the long game. That's what investment is, right? It's the long game, And it's hard. There's no manual, right? There's no right way to do something. It's timing, it's opportunity, and there's compromising. That's just what it is. This is not to discourage people who are attempting to buy a house or people who are attempting to sell. I want to make it clear that this is the new American housing economy. It will keep trickling down to where more people who are floating around a higher affluence level in income and credit, right? Those minimums that we talk about with FHA and all these other first-time home buying opportunities and the minimum down payment stuff is dissipating. It's dissipating, guys. Owning a home or being able to purchase a home will become a luxury if it's not already a luxury in most places, guys. Know your options. And I know we don't all have a crystal ball because life will be perfect. We would just know, where to turn left when we're supposed to turn left. You get what I'm saying? We would know when to jump, when there's a hurdle, but that's not how life goes. I just want to put my experience out there and sum it up as best as I can, because I could be talking about this for hours. If you found this video interesting, guys, leave a like for me. Comment if you've been through this. If you wanted to sell your home, wanted to buy a home, talk to me in the comments. If this is your first time seeing a video by Black, hit the sub. This is free support. I want to just keep spreading life and teaching individuals manifestations early, utilizing time, buying back our time and living in more peace and flexibility. Keep maneuvering.